We are talking the movie simply called Light, and this is written and directed by Matt Wallard and is a low-budget science fiction drama movie that you may see compared to the Vin Diesel movie Pitch Black, and it's kind of like a very low energy, low budget, slow version of that film in some ways, I guess. What's the story? Well, it focuses in some time in the future where humanity is colonized various planets and things like this, and we focus on two women who have escaped in pods from some type of spacecraft which is having problems, and these two women both land on this planet some ways apart, and this planet is effectively completely dark all the time, and an unbreathable atmosphere, and one of the women has a child, a young boy, who has also apparently made it down to the surface and is kind of missing. So we have these two women trying to communicate over radio, and they both have different kind of backgrounds, and try to figure out a way to survive. They're running out of air, and there seems to be some type of creature lurking in the darkness that is attracted whenever they try to use lights. So lights on their suits, searchlights on the ships, things like that. It ends up getting attacked. Now what will happen, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So it sounds like a pretty decent premise, doesn't it? This is a good example of a movie which is obviously very low budget, hiding its limitations with some clever ideas and kind of smart filmmaking to disguise the fact that it's clearly can't really afford to do a hell lot. So let's talk about what works. Now I have to give it props for trying to do this, like a somewhat of an ambitious story involving, you know, the far future and all of this, with, you know, creatures, sci-fi ideas on what is clearly a shoestring budget here. And what we do see on screen is not bad, I have to say. Now the whole premise here is this world is in eternal darkness, effectively, so you only ever can see like a few feet around you. So it's perpetually dark, and therefore you can kind of hide, you know, the surrounding areas. You can hide the set, you can hide the location where it's shooting, which gives it, you know, the story idea, but also it's a way to hide the budget. So, you know, it's smart filmmaking. There's no getting around it. So there's that. I think the idea here is solid. I mean, again, it's a little bit similar in a way to the Pitch Black movie, although that was quite a high octane action movie with other elements in it as well. This isn't really, there's only one element of it really, I suppose. But nonetheless, you know, I admire the ingenuity that the filmmakers have here to make a science fiction movie and kind of write around the problem of budget. And I think that's what you should do. In a way, I'd much prefer to see a movie that is clever enough to write around their problems and try to do things that simply they can't afford to do, and ends up having, you know, looking like a terrible Mark Polonia movie or something. So I'll give it props to that. It's taken very seriously. This is kind of like hard sci-fi, and the movie is effectively a character movie because we have these two women kind of talking, and they're from different backgrounds, and they're suspicious of one another, and they're suspicious of the rescue attempts that are trying to happen and things like this. So you know, there are some interesting kind of character dynamics here, with these kind of two people trying to kind of like feel each other out. I can't decide whether I like the acting, I have to be honest. I didn't think the acting didn't strike me as standing out as particularly bad, but I don't know if it was, because it's such a character-based movie, I felt like you needed to have really solid acting and writing, and I just don't know if they were at that quality, but it wasn't bad, if that made sense. We do see a little bit of VFX, and when we do see it, I've got to say, I thought it looks quite interesting. There's some interesting designs here, and the kind of this this future has this kind of like retro feel to it. The kind of the technology that they're using, the suits, the breathing equipment, all that sort of stuff. It has this sort of lived-in retro feel to it. I suspect they're kind of looking for that alien, you know, look, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's not too science fiction. It's not Star Trek-y. It's very much, you know, culminating in technology that's today, really, and just using it, you know, with these kind of high sci-fi ideas here. So, and the other thing I would say is this fact that it's perpetually dark all the time, and it kind of looks spooky, and I think it's a neat idea. The fear of the unknown, the fear that there's something out there. It's like Jaws under the surface of the water, you can't see it, and you're just wondering what's out there. So I think there's some good ideas there. But let's transition to what doesn't work. And I have to say, all the things I've mentioned, I don't know if people will care about. Because here is the problem. This movie is, by its very nature, quite dull to look at. This actually, I was thinking about it, this could be a radio drama. You didn't really even need to see anything in this film because it's ultimately a story about two women talking over the radio for about 70 minutes of this movie. That's the literal kind of way to describe what happens in like 70 minutes of this film. And as I've said, although I don't think the acting is bad per se, I think to have a movie which is so based in dialogue and characters, I think the acting really needs to be one step up. If you had like an action science fiction movie where it's more spectacle and lots of visual stuff going on, I think you can get away with maybe, you know, just okay acting. But here I think, whilst the acting isn't necessarily bad, I think it suffers from it being not great either, if that makes sense, because it's so reliant on having these characters. And the way that it's filmed, it's just lots of close-ups of women's faces in these suits, with just darkness around. It's incredibly dull to look at, and it's just conversation after conversation, delivered okay, but not particularly kind of enthusiastically. The performances here, like I say, they're not exactly Oscar baity, but they're not really emotive to me. They didn't really pull me in, and the dialogue is somewhat perfunctory, and again, it's just not sparkling. And if you're gonna, you know, if you're gonna have a movie like this is the things that where you're gonna get judged on. And I just feel there's not a huge amount of plot here, to be brutally honest. It's very much a conversation between two people, and when we look at the science fiction ideas here, a lot of people kind of are into the kind of the retro futuristic look, but it doesn't make sense narratively. It kind of looks like, you know, tech that you would see in the 1977 Star Wars movie in some ways, and it's just, if we're that advanced in the future, the tech just looks really low-fi, if that makes sense. It doesn't really make sense that you would have what seems to be relatively basic technology at this point by these people. So again, it's possibly a budgetary issue here, but you know, there it is. But ultimately, the biggest problem that people are going to have here is just the pacing of it, because it's just a couple of women walking in the dark for more or less the runtime. It's not really until you get to the last, you know, 15 minutes or so that we really see anything else. And visually speaking, it's not enough is done with it to make it visually interesting. You know, it has some neat ideas. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but they're kind of like, it's somewhat of a commentary on capitalism, I suppose. You know, when everything is kind of revealed, I suppose. It's going to suit some people who like hard sci-fi ideas and, you know, can get, don't worry too much about the pacing of it and that. But I've got to be honest with you, I think most people will just find this movie boring or dull. And I think that you could have had the same story and made it a little bit more interesting. The characters a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more done with the visuals. As it stands at the moment, like, this film, I think there are some good elements to it, but it just doesn't come together to make an entertaining movie or one that's got a particularly gripping narrative. So I feel this movie, I had a quick look, I was curious, and it's got 10s and 1s on the reviews that I've seen, nothing in between, 10s or 1s, and I ignore both of those scores, to be brutally honest. I'm going to give it a 4. I can't honestly say it's necessarily a good film for most people, but I do feel there may be people here who would appreciate some of the ideas here and the fact that it's obviously made from a low budget and this is how they've got around it. But as a whole, I don't think it's a particularly interesting film. So 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think? Please do leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.